We have a strange obsession with home ownership in this country. There is a common misconception that renting properties is a total waste of money, thus making the notion of buying your own home seem a more sensible decision. But is it really? You see, I've had this debate many times, and it is for that reason today, guys, that I want to run through some of the pros and cons of renting versus home ownership that maybe you guys haven't considered or thought about. And also I want to discuss why we as a nation are overly obsessed with owning a home when it may not even be the right thing to do given our particular circumstances. Now, of course, my hope in this video is not to just persuade you one way or another, but to just get you guys thinking outside of the box and away from the narratives that, well, let's be honest, the governments are often throwing down our way. Because let's be honest, the government is brilliant at putting down landlords 24/7 and pretending they are the sole problem for why many of you may not be able to get the homes that you truly desire, removing all accountability of their own decisions into the hands of, sadly, the landlords. And let's face it, if you only watch the news 24/7, then well, firstly, you probably won't see this video, but secondly, your judgment may be somewhat clouded and biased. But anyways, enough of all that. That's a debate for another day. Let's jump straight into this video. So I was doing some research the other day and I saw that Switzerland topped the list, followed by Hong Kong and Germany, where people rent their homes the most. And what I'll do is I'll get that list up for you right here now so you can see the full top 10. Because as you can see, in 8th place, we as a nation have 32.2% of our population renting homes too. And I'll be honest, I was a little surprised by this statistic. I always thought it'd be a lot more. But nonetheless, I was still eager to dive into the mindset of why us Brits are fascinated by home ownership, especially given the last 24 months where we've seen the prices rise above expectations and many first-time buyers opt to utilise 5% deposit schemes to buy, in my eyes, very overpriced houses just to get their foot on that housing ladder. However, before you guys shout and scream at me, if you were one of those people who opted for the 5% deposit scheme and found yourselves a home, I found some really interesting stats that you may find useful. You see, for the first time since December 2014, it is cheaper to rent a property than actually buy one. Hamptons International found that as of May 2021, tenants tended to spend £71 less a month on rent compared to monthly mortgage repayments for those who had 10% deposits. Yet, as a nation, we have almost this unchecked fact where we often state that renting is a complete waste of money. So why is this? Where did this come from? Well, I'm gonna have to give you a slight history lesson here because there's actually quite a few reasons where this came from. The first is, well, it's a Tory thing. Tory governments have championed home ownership ever since the I'm not sure why I got a lisp. Ever since the Thatcher days. Her right to buy scheme allowed many to become new homeowners, and today that clown, Boris, has declared his intent to turn generation rent into generation buy. Although let's be honest, if you believe a single word he says, then buying a home or renting it or vice versa may be the least of your problems. Now, another reason is a status thing. Let's be honest, owning your home is a flex. It's an indicator of wealth and status, and depending on your culture perhaps, or where you come from, it can certainly be made out to be more important than it actually is. Profit may be a thing that springs to many people's minds too. We all know that over time, houses tend to rise in value. So having a home that you know over time the price is going to rise may sway your decision making too. Plus, alongside this, you may simply hate the idea of renting. It would be very difficult to ignore the fact that some people just don't like the idea of renting. And when they have a family, they may say, and I quote, they want something to call their own. And let's face it, that's a reasonable excuse. Plus, as a landlord, I won't pretend to sit here and say that every one of us was made equal. Some are seriously an embarrassment and favour huge profits over their tenants' livelihood, leaving many of them in their rental properties in conditions I wouldn't wish upon anyone. At least with your own home, you have control over things not being fixed. You can simply fix them and not having to rely upon someone else. But you also have the peace of mind that you won't simply be removed from that property next month or in 3 months down the line if the landlord simply deserves to serve you notice. So it's definitely something to think about and something I can resonate with. But it's not all doom and gloom. So now what we're going to do is look at some of the positives of renting a property over buying one. The The first and most obvious one is maintenance and repair bills. This is not your responsibility, and the landlord has to take full responsibility for this. So when a boiler breaks down, don't worry, you aren't having to pay for it. The next is a small down payment. Unlike needing 5 to 15% deposit or whatever amount it is you're likely going to need to buy your own home, you only generally need a very small deposit when you rent out a home. This is usually around a month's rent, which, let's be honest, is far less hefty than the deposits you need to buy an actual house before getting yourself that mortgage. The third is flexibility. Although it depends obviously on your circumstances, for many having the flexibility to move around, downsize, upsize at your own discretion is a great positive, especially for people like myself. Next up, we have insurance costs. With owning your home, you may find yourself paying more insurance rather than if you were simply a tenant. And the last one, which is the most important one in my opinion, and one I personally opted to do myself, is that you can get your cash working better if you put it elsewhere. And what I mean by this is, let's say you have £100,000 equity in your house that you've been living in. You could, if you know what you're doing, invest £100,000 into properties or deals that would give you, let's say, £3,000 monthly net cash flow. You then have the possibility of renting for £3,000, which, depending obviously where you are, would be a pretty decent amount, especially given that the average rent in the UK is £1,058. You're going to find yourself in the upper bracket in terms of renting. Now, alongside your cash flow being able to cover the rent, you would also have the investments that generate this income growing in value over time. So rather than one house growing in capital appreciation, depending obviously on how you invested that £100,000, you could have multiple properties growing in capital appreciation rather than just having that one residential home. And remember, when you're all renting, you get all the advantages of the above as well, such as insurance being lower, flexibility, maintenance costs, all sorted out for you. And you may even benefit from amenities. For example, if you choose to rent in a luxury apartment that maybe has a gym or a swimming pool, for example. Now, the only downside to this, which I have to stress, is you won't be able to flex that you own your own home. However, you can flex that your rent is covered by multiple investment properties, and well, let's face it, you have a lot more potential freedom. And this is something, in my opinion, to think about, my friends. And just before I close this video, one thing I was pleasantly surprised by was actually the feedback I got from my Instagram family about the views on whether renting was a waste of money or not. You see, I remember asking this question a few years ago, and 90% of people would say that renting was a waste of money. So it was nice to see that people had come on and now they have different perspectives. Maybe that's just from watching my videos. And I also ran this poll on my YouTube, which at this point only had 47 votes, but again, wasn't all against renting either, which was nice to see. But here's the latest figures as of editing this video, which I hope, my friends, gives you something to at least think about. And on the topic of thinking, one thing you don't need to think about is smashing that like button if you're with me up until this point or you found any of this video useful. And as always, guys, when you could have been doing anything, but you chose to spend a few moments with me, that makes you pretty awesome, and I truly appreciate that. So until next time, my friends, thanks for watching.